Hi guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about how to combine all 16 personality types in one table so we can represent everything in one place. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with the personality types represented by the cognitive functions, and we're going to reach this kind of table here, and we'll explain why we choose this specific configuration for the types and how to arrive there. Okay, so the first question is, here are all the 16 personality types represented by their cognitive function stack. You see it's a lot of information here. So how do we compress this information so we can fit it in one table? And this is what we're going to tackle in this slide. So what we can do, we already did this trick in one previous lecture where we have one personality type here, which is the ENTP, and we can use the trick with the cognitive axis. So if you see here the cognitive axis, we know that some functions are connected to other functions. For example, NE is always connected to SI and TI is always connected to FE because it's part of the cognitive function axis rules. And since this is the case, it means that we don't need all four functions to represent the type. We only need the top two functions. So we can represent this type by their top two functions in the order they appear here in the type. So for the ENTP, it will become the NETI. And similarly, for the ISTP, it will become the TISE, since these are the top two functions in this specific order. Okay, so we can do this now for all 16 types and we can compress them all. So here are all the 16 types compressed. You can see here NETI, NEFI, and so on and so forth, using all the cognitive function stack, first and second function for each personality type. And also in parentheses, you can see how this type corresponds to the MBTI notation that is commonly known. So the NETI is the ENTP, the TNI is the ENTJ. If you don't understand how to map those two, we have another video about this on the channel, so you can go and check this out. And also I have attached like the pictures related to the MBTI type, if somebody's familiar with those, just to make sure we understand how this is mapped. Okay, now how should we combine this in one table? What is the appropriate way to combine all 16 personality types in one table? Well, we have two important concepts that we want to tackle during this phase. So the first concept is the modes of operation. So we want the table to represent somehow these modes of operation, since we consider that they are very important in understanding the personality types. And for each mode of operation, there are four types. And the other concept is the temperament. And we, in one previous video, we defined the temperament as the combination of the first two functions in the type define the temperament. So NITE is going to be the so-called NT temperament. And this is the reason for this is that usually the top two functions are the strongest. So if they indeed are the strongest, the type represented by these functions, temperament, is going to be most affected by them. So this is why how we define the temperament. And how do we get both of those concepts in one table? Well, in the table we have rows and columns, right? So we use one concept for the rows and the other concept for the columns, and this is what we get. So we have all the modes of operation at the top, there's a column, and then on the left side for each row we have the temperament. So we have the SF temperament, which are all the types that have feeling and sensing. So here you see here FESI, SEFI, SIFE, and FISE types. And by the way, we also have this represented with the MBTI notation. So this is exactly the same table, just that instead of using the notation that we have here with the cognitive functions representation, we use the letters from the MBTI. It's the same table. But you can see here that the intersection here with JE and SF gives us the type. So we have on the column, we have the mode of operation, so extrovert judgment, extrovert perception, and so on and so forth. And on the row, we have the temperament. And indeed, in my opinion, this is the best way to represent every personality type in one table, taking into account the most important concepts related to the personality type. Now, on the last part of this video, we can talk a bit about David Keirsey's temperaments. So first of all, here is our representations that we arrived right now at it. And David Keirsey actually did something different. So if you look at David Kiersey, so this is how David Kiersey decided to group the types, and we can see here it's similar to our table, but actually there are a couple of differences. So let's try to find the differences. So this part here is the same as with us, so we don't have any differences there. This one is the same. And by the way, how he calls those temperaments, so those are the 4 temperaments. He calls them guardians, which is the SJ, artisans is the SP, rationals is the NT, and idealist is the NF. And if you are more familiar with the 16 personalities website, there they use different terminology, but it's the same kind of temperament. So the 16 personality site, they use sentinels, explorers, analysts, and diplomats, but it's essentially the same thing as what David Kiersey designed. And in our case, so the NT and NF is the same, but there is a difference between the first two. So David Kiersey decided to group the types with SJ temperament and SP temperament. So this is what he calls the temperaments here, the sensing ones. And for us, you can notice that it's actually SF and ST. So why do I think that this is the better way that we did right now for this specific grouping? Is that it takes into account the modes of operation as well. So if you look at the SP from the David Kiersey representation, so SP means all the types that use extroverted sensing as one of their top 2 slots, which are, we can see here more clearly on this table, the ACTI, the SEFI, and also the FISE and TISE, which are the ESFP, ESTP, ISFP, and ISFP. So these are the SPs for David Kiersey, and accordingly, the SJs are these 4. And we can see that if we group it in this way, first of all, it's inconsistent, right? Because the other temperaments are grouped in a different way. So the NTs and NFs are actually grouped in a proper way where we don't have only one perception function, but we have both perception functions, and we use the temperaments, like the NT temperament is here, and for the NF as well. But for the SPs and SJs, David Kiersey decided to group them by the usage of their perception function instead of in the other way around, which is for the NT and NF. So in my opinion, this representation that we use here is better, and also it takes into account the modes of operation, which are very important, and you can actually identify sometimes a person's type by using specific information by the modes of operation. But you can see here that from the SP types, we have 2 people, or 2 types rather, which are on the same, have the same mode of operation, while in our grouping, this is not the case. So each temperament has all 4 modes of operation properly structured here. Okay, I hope this is clear. So if you have any questions, let me know. And this is it for this video. Thank you. Bye-bye.